Thank you for finding us. Another edition of No Stoplights. I want to thank our sponsors, Francis Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky Fins, Victor's, Marlboro MPD Electric Co-op, McCall Farms, Pepsi of Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. All have been kind enough to kind of join us along on this journey of trying to create somewhat of a presence in our digital space. We've done fairly well at attracting an audience and a following on the radio, and we're in the process, we think, of another big announcement of the advancement of our podcast. We believe by the middle of maybe the end of this month, first of next month, that we'll have some real encouraging and positive news about the next step in the process or in the growing up of No Stoplights, the progress of No Stoplights. The last two or three I've kind of done on my own. This one I have a guest, a special guest, someone who joins us every Friday morning on Wake Up Carolina. He's a friend of mine, someone who we got in politics at about the same time. He's managed to stay in while I didn't. But I get to ask the hard, difficult questions of a powerful politician. And that's what a journalist or a member of the media always wants to do. Representative Phillip Lowe is with us. Phillip is a State House member. He is also a member of the prestigious and powerful Ways and Means in the House. Phillip, how are you? Or do you want me to call you Representative Lowe?
Call me Phillip.
Okay.
This is relaxed time.
Had a situation with your dog, man. What's up with that?
That was a spooky thing this morning. We were fetching. I was throwing a bumper for her, and she cut the corner too close to a trailer and caught an angle iron, and it ripped about an 8-inch gash in the side of her. It's all skin. She's no ribs are associated, and she's in surgery right now, just stitching though.
Is that okay? You're an outdoorsman.
Yes,
we know that to be true. Is she a pet or a working dog? Is she one of your retrievers, or is it all a pet?
A Labrador retriever. Okay. She lays up in my lap a lot, and then when I want her to go retrieve, she does that. But
I got you.
The vet told me, and I'm going on to a trip in Canada to take her and go hunting. He said that 14 days from now, they'll take stitches out, and if it's not, oozing and got some problems, then she can go hunt with me. So I'm smiling, even though I'm worried right this second.
Phillip, if you could only hunt or fish, if you could do one or the other, but not both, would it be hunting or fishing for you?
Look, I saw the debate last night. I don't have to answer your question.
No, you don't.
I hunt, and that's my favorite, and I fish when I can't hunt.
How do you balance being a conservative, limited government guy, because you are, and I want to get into your early days in the State House. You would be a rabble-rouser. You would have been a back row bomb thrower. Fair enough. I mean, you don't run from that or deny that, do you?
I still am.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But you've taken on another responsibility we'll get to in just a second. But how do you balance the conservation side of you? Because I know you well enough to know that preserving some of our pristine property is real important, and the government's the only thing that can do that.
Well, it started out kind of selfishly because I want places to go hunting, right? So if you don't conserve them, you may not have them, and you have to have places of refuge too, so that animals can go and not be disturbed some. So you need that for the balance in the ecology and with migratory birds and things like that. So, I look at my role is to conserve something for the future. I know it'll never be as good as I had it, hunting and fishing. I think every year it seems to get a little worse. And so I'm doing what I can to conserve that for the next generation. As fast as South Carolina is growing now, we've just got to continue to fight to conserve things.
And that's where I was headed. Where is the crossroads between development, overdevelopment? We're having a lot. We run an ad when you guys joined us on the radio, the crocodiles and human encounters. Well, I mean, that's overdevelopment. What I'm saying is, as an outdoorsman, it would have probably been a lot more conducive to preserving acreage in a state that had 3.5 million people. Now we got 5.5, going on 6, maybe one day 7 or 8 million. And I want to ask you some questions about that. But it's getting real complicated, fair enough, because people are desiring to move to South Carolina. And when you develop property, it means you're not preserving property.
Yeah, and as you know, I do some development.
Sure.
So I'm a physical therapist and still own a clinic, and it's been a great profession for me. But it got to where there wasn't enough money left in it. It had I guess, reimbursement and several other factors. But I develop now, and it's residential. 95% of it's residential development. It kind of hurts me a little bit inside to go take a pretty farm or pretty woods and tear them up, because here's the sad part: people don't want 60 feet wide on a house for the lot and 120 feet long, and they don't want a single tree on it. And the builders won't buy them from you if there's a tree on that lot. So you have to just completely strip it down to nothing so they can build that house on it. And I shake my head at myself when I look at it after I take a tree down. And I always fight. I get myself in trouble because I want to save a couple of those real big, pretty ones.
Sure.
And they always come back to haunt you, and the builder will come up. I don't want that on my lot, and it's gone.
I don't want to get you in trouble. I spend a good bit of time at the coast. You spend some time along the coast. Does it concern you, and I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but does it concern you as a native South Carolinian that along our coast we're losing some of the local culture, the local flavor? I joke around. It's easy for me to say because I'm not an elected official, but I think they should move the Michigan-Ohio State football game to Coastal Carolina Stadium so the people who left Michigan and Ohio and came to Horry and Georgetown County don't have to drive all the way back to the Midwest. Does it bother you? And I don't want to get you in trouble, but does it bother you that the culture that you and I grew up with, that the coast of South Carolina is becoming a lot less Southern?
It is, and I recently got a vacation place down in Georgetown, and I said, man, this is great. The no-see-ums have been so bad, and the horseflies and mosquitoes, it's kept most of the northerners away because it just is uninhabitable at times, like in May when they first hatch out. It's tough scratching, getting in your hair. I don't know how you'd sell real estate to somebody who couldn't live with that, but it's poised. That area is poised for growth. The only places that really haven't developed are swampy areas, and Georgetown's got a lot of low country, a lot of swamp, a lot of DNR wildlife management for waterfowl and all in that whole area, and that's the only reason it isn't there. You look at Sockasty, the last time they have a flood, I mean, they're up to their necks trying to get out of their homes. So anywhere that's low, you have to think about and not develop it and try to preserve it, and because you just shouldn't develop everything.
Because once you develop it, it's gone forever.
Gone.
I look at a map and I see Charleston County, Horry County, big mass population, growing like crazy. Georgetown's kind of right in the center of that. So just by the natural order of things, it's going to have to grow at some point in time. They've got a steel mill down there that they got to make some big decisions about the property and what to do with that property. They're kind of in a quandary. That steel mill provided a lot of jobs, a lot of income, a lot of quality of life for an area that is now looked at as more, I don't want to say resorty, but it's not a mill town any longer.
It's changing.
And it'll change whether it wants to change or not. It just, the locals will decide what sort of pace and rate. I called you a rabble-rouser in the early days and a back row guy, and I know you to be naturally conservative, stubbornly conservative. I think you would consider that a compliment. But you messed around and stayed there and gained the respect of other members of the House, and now you remember the ways and means. How has that affected or impacted your ability to be who you want to be in Columbia?
Oh, that hurts to talk about it. It really does, because I want to throw the rotten apple still. It's still where my heart is, I didn't go up
Rail
there
against government.
I didn't go up there to go along and get along. I went up there to make changes, to take away some of this. I mean, you look at the development as just one part of life and all. There's so much permissions that you need from government, and you get tired of that. The average person looks at government as not their friend, as an enemy. I don't know how a lot of folks think that they're the savior. They help their lives. I feel like they're kind of in the way of me doing things. So I started out there. It's kind of a funny little story, but we had about 12 brand new freshmen, and we thought we hung the moon, and we started something called Fight Club. You remember that movie, Fight Club? Well, of course, what you couldn't do with Fight Club, the one rule of Fight Club was you couldn't talk about Fight Club. So we had to meet on the side. And we thought we were going to change it. We thought Sanford and us, we were just going to take over the world up there, And what you find out is governing is more difficult than just throwing rotten eggs and apples. And that's what I've learned, that sometimes you don't get it like you want. You could sit there and say, well, I'm more conservative than you. Why? Well, because you said for armed robbery, I want you to go to jail for 7 years, and I think it's 10. So, you're soft on crime. And you start putting people in that box like that to make people look at you. And it's still going on today. Every freshman class has that group that comes in that thinks they got to change the world. But if you stay there long enough, you do have to govern.
Phillip, does it concern you, or do you care to give an opinion on? I mean, I was in Columbia in 2010 and 11, and I got courted by some of the national candidates because South Carolina is such an important. Does it concern you that at times the governor of South Carolina is placed in the national spotlight that may give them an opportunity to be something other than just the governor of South Carolina?
No, it doesn't bother me.
But, I mean, you accept it as reality. I mean, it is the nature of the beast. South Carolina has first in the South primary. It's a very important state in choosing a Republican nominee. And at times I've noticed some of our governors become national politicians, and I wish they'd pay a little more attention to the job at home.
Everybody wants more power. It's kind of, you're supposed to serve your area and take care of your constituents. But deep down, most politicians have a pretty big ego, and they want more power. I want more power. I want to rule the world. But it's a slow process. Except some people can just shoot to the top like a star. And I had to work hard. 18 years. Ooh, that's a long time.
Well, you were stubborn, and I know you to be that, and I applaud you for being stubborn. Okay, you get on Ways and Means. That means that you're in the room when the money is spent. Some like that because it makes it makes your influence a lot more profound. Some don't like it because you got to explain why you spent money here and didn't spend money over there. You made a commitment, and I really want to get into details here. We're talking about South Carolina growing. One of the areas that is not as growing as fast as we wish it would is mine in your hometown, the place that we grew up and call home. You felt it necessary when you were able to become a member of the Ways and Means and have some say over where the money's appropriated and allocated. You made economic development a priority of yours. Walk me through the process of how you decided that we've got to address some of the shortcomings we have in economic development and how you could help.
Business comes natural to me. I went to USC before I got into physical therapy school and went to what's Darla Moore. It wasn't back then, but it's the School of Business there. And of course now my second career is developing. So it's a natural place for me to be. The sad part, we had the most powerful man in the state, Hugh Leatherman, Senator Hugh Leatherman. I was on Ways and Means. I'd set it up. I'd get something in the budget. It'd go to the Senate, and he'd boost it up to a nice fat number, and he'd knock it out the park. And unfortunately, of course, he passed. He served a long, long time. I'm not serving that long, I promise you. And I want you to tell me if I get much more like Biden-esque, I guess, would be if I start slipping. You just say, Phillip, your time's up. Just let me know,
your time's
please.
not up yet.
Yeah, it isn't up
We'll
yet.
cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah. So anyway, when he passed, it left a huge void and shoes that were hard to fill. But this area needed somebody who could still help with projects and development and growth because we're underserved. I mean, you look around, Florence has just Jay Jordan's district's the only one that has enough growth that it comes out close to the average of the state growth. Mine has never, and I bet I get 3,000 to 4,000 new people every 10 years just to try to catch up. I have to get more area, a different area, to pick up population because I don't have enough growth. We almost lost Kirby last time. Representative Kirby is down in Lake City, and that area hadn't grown enough. So, he got combined with another guy. They went head to head. Kirby won, thank goodness. But we're at a point now where someone's got to help make this place, I guess, make projects possible because we don't have the growth. We don't have the natural growth That's where you really want government to grow, when the people grow, when the population grows, more income. But you don't want to go out and tax more or do anything out of the ordinary. So first thing that I did after the passing was I called together and got together who I thought was the main economic development people.
Who would that have been, Phillip?
Well, I got all three.
Without calling names, I mean, who would have been in that room? Who do you think needed to be there?
All three of the philanthropic organizations, the big ones, you know, the three, the Darla and Powers and Bruce and Lee Foundation, they came. And we got people from the county to come, you know, Florence Progress. We got people off the city and county council. And I've got a couple of other people in the room from the delegation, the state delegation, and then Joe King and several people that came in. And I first told them about the ARPA money and what they needed to be looking for and how to spend it. And
that would have been American Rescue Plan.
Yes.
Some of what we call COVID money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And said, this money is coming, guys. It's for infrastructure. Don't try to spend it on anything else. I want infrastructure in this area. And that's what we're going to limit it to. So they all went back to the drawing board. They came back to me, and I said, tell me where you can completely take care of all the needs in some industrial sites that you own now that you've gotten partially funded, but it just hadn't got it. So they gave me one for East Florence, one out in West Florence near Honda. I got one down in Scranton, and one out at I-95 at 327 there, and completely funded those through state government. The next year, I went after trying to help with essentially the workforce that we have here, and I started with K-12. We got some money for Pointer to be renovated, I think about $10 million there. And that was for medical type field, and actually counties around us can send kids there too. We got money for tech, got money for Francis Marion, and tried to help our workforce out. The battery plant is something that was coming along about that time too, and we made sure that we got $200 million from the state, from the Department of Commerce. We made sure we funded it. That's where I helped a lot, was just inside making sure the funds were put into the account. Then we applied and got them and earned them. And of course, we've had that one has already started, and the next phase 1, 2, and 3, an average of $50 million apiece more for them. So we're close to $300 million and close to 3,000 jobs coming to this area. And that is because I care, and because I made sure that we were counted, and it wasn't all just going to the big cities of Greenville, Charleston, and Columbia. Now, I'm not bragging, but
I get it,
that was my responsibility.
Another responsibility and I want to get to economic development again, but how involved and how important is it for the delegation? Not necessarily to speak at one, because you talked about Democrats and Republicans and rural and a little more urban districts, white members, African-American members, women, men. How important is it as chairman of the delegation to build and create and understand some sort of consensus about what not just your district, but the area in general needs?
Well, that's it. You can't be selfish and think about your needs, or you'll get voted out of being the delegation chair. And you can't just think about the needs of your constituents only. I've had to become more of a regional guy, because our people, even though the delegation is in Florence, it's also got parts of Darlington, parts of Marion, parts of Kingstree, of Williamsburg County, even Berkeley County, believe it or not. We've got a large area, probably Clarendon too, but we connect with the whole PD, at least half of it. There's about maybe eight counties in the PD, but we've got at least 4 of them right here associated with this delegation, and they come to me with needs, and I've got more than to worry about mine. The delegation works very well together.
Is it fair to say that Washington is hyper-partisan? Columbia's partisan to some degree. There are far more Republicans than there are Democrats, but you don't not help someone in your delegation because they're a Democrat with a need in their district.
No, you've got to treat everybody as your own constituent. I may be voted in by Republicans, but I have to work for my Democrats too. I can't just cotton to one group or another, and I've got to make sure that everybody in the delegation feels important. I'm proud to say we work together well, and that it's important that I help them when I can on Ways and Means. And it's not my money, guys.
Sure.
This is the state money, and that money, we have a balanced budget. That money is going to be spent somewhere, and I'm fighting for our share of it.
Is that what you feel your most important job is? I mean, as much of a proponent of limited government as you are, the reality is the state takes an X number of dollars, and it's going to be spent somewhere. I mean, it's going to be allocated, appropriated. You guys have given some tax refunds and some tax cuts, and I applaud you for that. But at the end of the day, if the state's general fund is X, the General Assembly is responsible for spending that money, it's going to Greenville, Charleston, York County, and you're there with the delegation, fighting, scratching, clawing. No matter how limited government mindset you had, you want as many millions spent to the PD as possible.
That's true. And they feel weird about it. You kind of like, why can't we just send this money back to the taxpayer? And we make sure that we're doing that. And, Governor McMaster worked with us, and we got a plan to take from 7% down to 6%. And we're already at, 6.3 maybe or something. So we're in good shape as far as trying to give back money, but we're also investing in infrastructure. And the worst thing to do is to have all these people move in, and your roads are so cluttered and torn up you can't use them. Your schools are overcrowded. Your water and sewer systems, all that stuff doesn't serve the people enough. And if your infrastructure isn't ready, if your electricity isn't there, you're going to have a major rotten egg in your face because we've got a lot of needs, and that surprisingly that growth is coming to Florence now.
Why did we get behind on the roads? I mean, I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming this session of the General Assembly. But how did we get? I mean, is it the growth that came so fast and we weren't prepared? No. What happened with our roads?
Years back, the senators' kind of projects were to cut roads for people, and they'd cut a road connected from here to here. Farm to market roads were what they were called. They were kind of sloppily done. They didn't bring enough, good dirt in there. They didn't put enough rock on it.
Probably didn't have so much money.
They got whatever connected A to B, and so we have a lot of roads. And then we started where we were put in a situation where basically the Senate would not let us take money from our budget, or general fund budget, to pay for roads, to pay for maintenance of them. They said, nope. We're going to have to tax. We're going to have to get a gasoline tax. And, boy, we fought for 10 years over that and fought it. And the roads got so bad, all we heard was complaints about the road. And that's essentially what happened to it is we voted. We would send them bills, and we'd send them a budget that had $300 million for roads. And they go, nope, we're not taking it out of our general fund budget. So we just created a terrible infrastructure problem.
Was it hard to vote for the gas tax?
Oh, it's terrible.
How did you stew over that?
Man, nobody wanted to do it. I was told if I want to be on Ways and Means, I better vote for it.
Any regrets, or do you still think it?
Yeah, I hate it. Because here's the deal. Look at inflation now. Go back and look at 2 cents a year? Gas goes up 2 cents a minute sometimes. I mean, it in a month's time, it may go $1, up $1 or down $1. We got a lot of grief, and rightly so. I hate a tax increase more than anybody. But what was it, 12 cents we ended up with?
Staggered over 6 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's gradually going up. Yeah, and inflation ate every penny of that up, right? So where would we be without that little bit extra? We would never be catching up. And we're catching up, but we're also...
Are you comfortable with catching up, Phillip, on repairing and constructing new roads and bridges?
The only way we're really catching up is we're taking money from the general fund now.
Prioritizing infrastructure.
Finally.
Is it in the name of economic development, or is it to accommodate all this fast I mean, the migration of population coming down south.
It's the blessed thing that the public does, and it's blessed. We're blessed to have a public that complained about their roads loud enough. And we are in a situation now where people who were blocking funding it through the budget are no longer there. And we can now fund through the budget. So the gas tax gives Florence County about $3.8 million a year. For the last 3 years, we've bumped that up to $10 million coming out of our budget just to Florence County. So it went from almost tripled it, and that came out of the general fund. And we're funding all these roads now, not all the infrastructure, but we're going to have the I-95 down at where it crosses over Santee River, the Santee Cooper Lake there. That's got to get widened. The PD River Bridge has got to get widened. So we're going to get some of our share in the PD too.
One of the concerns I have, and I've expressed this over and over to you and Jay and Mike, Roger Kirby, Kent Williams, whoever will listen, is the disproportional growth in the state. You mentioned the Grand Strand. You mentioned how big your geographic area is in regards to the delegation that you are the chairman of. But in all honesty, Phillip, I'm concerned. I've done the math, and not just back a napkin. I really got specific about it. If the trend continues as is, we're going to have, I'll use the Senate as an example, we're going to have 60% of South Carolina state senators from about 15 to 18% of its counties. Horry County, Greenville County, York County, Charleston County, maybe Lexington County to some degree. Does that concern you? Should it concern the people of South Carolina?
It should. They're concentrating power. And if we look around, the big cities in the nation, most of them aren't really where I want to live and don't have the politics I enjoy. So the rural areas are losing power, and they're losing their way of life. And the only rural areas that are growing are the ones that are right beside a town, that's a city that's expanding into them. Everywhere else pretty much shrinking, and that's up and down the coast. Once you get away from the coast, that's all the way to the mountains. It's like that. So if we don't, I don't know. I don't know any way that we can change that really, because of lawsuits and all that happen. But we've got to make sure that we coalesce around Horry County. And they help us, and we help them.
Explain that, how you build these bridges. I mean, Horry's got their responsibilities. They've got their challenges. Tourism, I think infrastructure, roads, bridges, stormwater drainage. We've got our challenges trying to figure out a way to grow. You've invested, or the delegation has, heavily in economic development. I mean, tell as much or as little as you like, but behind closed doors, what does a delegation like yours negotiate with a delegation like Horry County? I mean, you're kind of neighbors. You know, Horry's an interesting animal. I don't say that in negative or positive way. The PD is the PD. Horry geographically is in the PD, but we kind of wonder if they aren't their own region within themselves.
Well, they're the most dominant part of our district. And you very often, you're looking at, say, boards and commissions and stuff that we fill, the USC board or something, there would be one for the 7th district. And since they have more power, because they have much more population down there, they probably got 8 or 10 people that can vote, and we got like 3 that can vote, in the Republican side of the
Sure.
equation. And so you end up with people down there controlling a lot more of the boards and stuff. So we have to fight and negotiate a little bit back and forth that, hey, give us something too. So we've kind of had the USC boards more than they have, and we've got one on the dental board, and so we struggle a little bit, but they've got the GOT board, but that's a powerful one.
But relationships matter.
Sure.
The ability to work together, no matter if you're on the beach or along the coast or if you're in the PD region. I want to go back to infrastructure because I'm a guy with a radio show and now a podcast that can stir it up a bit, but I don't have any legislative authority. I don't have the ability to demand of elected officials sit down with me and let's work on something. Phillip, I'm deeply, and I've told you this off the record, I am deeply concerned about the situation with water in the city of Florence. I'm not throwing a council under the bus. I'm certainly not throwing a mayor under the bus. It is what it is. It doesn't matter how we got here, but here we are. I got elected to county council in 2004 2 years prior to my getting elected to council, the county decided to sell its water system to the city. Hence, the city became a monopoly of water. And I would argue there have been a series of bad decisions that got us into a place that it is right now untenable. I mean, it is a very complicated situation we find ourselves in. You've made economic development a priority. I've been in some of those meetings, Phillip, where you got to put checks in boxes, affordable, dependable electricity. Marlboro PD Electric Co-op answers that every single time with flying colors. Infrastructure, you've made a big investment there along with the rest of the delegation. But when it comes to water, and I'm not talking about just clean, safe drinking water for residential customers, I'm talking about economic development as well. How concerned are you? What are you doing to try and alleviate the problem the city finds itself in with its water system?
We're in a conundrum right now because we are experiencing growth. I think the battery plant needs 1 million gallons a day. That's a lot. And, we've got, 70 or so wells, and then we draw water out of the PD River. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both ways, but it helps to have both types. And also, if you really had a real dry river, you may be able to survive on your wells. But what we have is a system that hasn't been maintained well. It's gotten old. The infrastructure of sewer, of water, and storm water are all a problem in and around the city. If you look, the city of Florence, essentially, when it took over the county, it took over the Florence District 1 region. So that goes all the way to PD River, that comes up the Lynch's River, and goes all the way to Timmonsville. So it's there. It's not on the other side of Lynch's River. But that whole area is probably 63% of the total population of Florence County. And everybody's seen it lately. Brown water, low pressure, boil water advisories, things like that. But some of those were some accidents that aren't serious, but the fact of the matter is we've got to reinvest in it. And I'm trying to put together some folks to talk about it because we're going to have to look at this collectively.
Is it as severe as I believe it is?
Yes, it is.
It's an expensive problem.
It's incredibly expensive to go in and repair and replace a pipe. Think about all the things that are in ground, that are beside a road. All the different sewer, there's water, there's AT&T, there's fiber optic stuff going on in there. There's gas. There's all that is in this little tight little space between the road and the property line, generally about 11 feet. All that stuff's on one side or the other, and sometimes buried down the middle of it. But you've got to remove something and replace something in a very tedious place to work. If you've ever run a track hoe, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's tight, and it ends up being very slow. And that's what we have to do when we widen roads enough. You got to move that stuff, that infrastructure out from under the road. So what we've got to do now is find a way, and this is serious, county councilmen, city councilmen, and state government absolutely have to work together as though there are no lines. There's only one line, and it's the county line. And you've got to think through this whole problem, find the best solution that's going to be the least expense, because your water rates are going to go up. The question is how much? Will we and can we actually work together? That's kind of where I'm at now. I feel like someone's got to dig in on it because the state won't throw you a big bone for all that.
What can the state do to help? I mean, obviously the city and county. You mentioned the state, maybe the federal government in some way, shape, or form. There are these pots of money in government. Phillip knows about them. I know a little bit about them. And you try to access some of these pots of money. But from your perspective, I think you can speak for the General Assembly. I mean, I don't want to know an amount, but what do you think you can do to help support the county and city as we address the problem?
This past year, I got them $5 million for water. And we got several other things, and won't go into since we're talking about infrastructure and all. But that's important. But it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, a literal drop in the bucket. And I sat down and talked to them the other day, and it said, any idea how much we need? They're trying to get me that number now, but at best, I'm gonna get $20 million a year. What do I tell Tech? What do I tell Princess Marion? What do I tell my small cities, my small towns? I'm sorry, we need it all. I don't know where we're going to be able to get it from, but there's matching money that's available in certain cases for certain projects, and you just kind of have to know where those pots of money are and apply. But it always takes your match. You've got to come up with your share. There's the ability to bond. Bonding is nothing more than a credit card, though. You got to pay it back. It's no cure, but you're going to have to raise rates to pay the bond and to do this. So rates are getting ready to go crazy.
Is it fair to argue that not only are we talking about industry recruitment or economic development, we're also talking about, I'm thinking of McLeod MUSC. They're at risk if they can't count on dependable, safe, and affordable water.
It's the most important issue in our county now. And we only have one chance to screw up. If we screw up this battery plant and can't provide that 1 million gallons for them and can't keep our industries alive that are here and our hospitals alive and good, safe drinking water, we're going to get known for some bad stuff. We don't want to say, well, we screwed up. Don't come here in the future.
Yeah, the Flint of South Carolina. You've heard that, and I've heard that. We certainly don't need that reputation. So, Phillip, the point you're trying to make, and I want you to drive it home, we don't have the luxury of having fiefdoms here. It's not the county versus the city versus the state versus the federal government. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's not rural versus urban. This problem is such a major problem, we're going to have to bury some egos. We're going to put some political differences aside and bust our ass to address the situation. That doesn't matter how we got here. And I'm not blaming local council, the current council. There were mistakes made before they got there, but it's their baby now. It's on their watch, and it's going to take a lot of checking of egos at the door to get us to a better place.
You don't have to blame them. They'll catch their blame when the rates go up on water. It won't be you. You don't have to say it. You don't have to say it one time on the radio.
You know this. You're talking about business. I grew up in business. When you bond means you borrow. When you borrow means you pay back. When you pay back, you more likely than not pay back from a revenue source. If you're improving or maintaining your water system that you've gotten woefully behind with, the water rates will eventually increase pretty exponentially to cover the cost of maintenance and expanding. It's not. You don't have to go to Darla Moore School of Business to understand the math behind maintaining and funding what it takes to get the water system back above par.
And I believe that Willard Doherty said the other day that people in the county, which might be just 10 feet in the county from the city limits, their rates are nearly double. And so if they're going to get rate increases, theirs is going to get a lot quicker because it's going to be probably a percentage that goes up. So a percentage of 100 is a lot more than more money is coming out of your pocket. So
we could be looking, I don't want to get you on the record, but we could be looking at water bills of several $100s and with residential consumers. I don't want you to go down that road because you're working with people that you've got to maintain that working relationship with. I don't. I'm just encouraging you and everybody else that can help make a decision to get us to a better place. Check your ego, check your partisanship. This is a problem much bigger than what Phillip can do at the state, or the county, what the city. It's going to take everybody pulling in a very common direction.
And here's my hope. I see a new mayor coming, Peaches, and we've got William Schofield, and he's the chairman of the county council. William kind of helped her. Georgia Bailey kind of helped her.
A Republican and a Democrat.
I kind of helped her. I wanted to see the city and the county finally work together. We're at that threshold, and I'm going to try to make that happen now.
We can't do it without it. Last thing I want to touch base with you. You have been on a soapbox for years. I could easily argue there's too many Republicans in Columbia. Now, you won't argue that. If I were in Columbia, I wouldn't argue that. But, the breakdown of the population and the representation of Republicans. But I'd also argue there aren't enough Republicans in city government. That's been something you have had kind of a keen interest in, annexation of certain more likely Republican voters than other areas. Is that part of the answer, Phillip, to create more bipartisanship in our city government?
I don't know that that's going to get thrown into this, but, I think in the 70s there was a lawsuit, NAACP sued, and we've got 4 of our 7 city council seats, including the mayor's seat in that. That's done district-wide, so everybody in the city limits votes on those. Then you have 3 that are partisan type things. One of them is a Republican, so we have 1 out of 7 seats on there as Republicans, and that's probably not fair, so it would be nice if we could do like almost everywhere else in our state and go to a nonpartisan election. So we're not playing politics. Let the people run, put the ideas forth, and do the best you can. And that way, when you get these crazy movements that come down the pipe or something, everybody doesn't just jump onto one concept or one idea. It might be all in community development. When you need to put your money into a water system, you got to think what's the most important thing, and be a CEO of a business at that point.
I told you a story. I said that was the last thing. This is actually the last thing. The South Carolina Supreme Court has not reflected how conservative the state of South Carolina is. You would agree to that over the last 25 or 30 years.
Right.
And a lot of this goes back to people getting elected as Democrats. And once the South turned red, they converted to Republicans. Some don't like that. It's the nature of the beast. Politicians like getting reelected. If you ran as a Democrat, and it's going to be harder to win as a Democrat, sometimes they'll switch parties. And we had kind of an evolution within the state of South Carolina, Democrats converting to become Republicans. You talked about Senator Leatherman a second ago. He was a Democrat. Governor David Beasley ran as a state house member as a Democrat. Harvey Peeler, Senate Finance Chair now, ran as a Democrat, now a Republican. But how conservative do you believe the court is today in relation to the last 20 or 25 years? Because a lot of people are frustrated that South Carolina is a deep red state, but the damn Supreme Court's not as conservative as it should be.
Their term is 10 years. So once they're on, the next 10 years, they're there. You're not going to do anything to them. They can do anything. Now, in 10 years, you can reelect. All of them don't come at the same year, but you can reelect them or unelect them. Back to the Supreme Court. We finally have a Supreme Court that is mostly conservative. Doesn't mean every idea that comes out of it is going to be conservative, but it's a lot more conservative than it was. I think we had a ruling today that we'll probably talk about on the radio, I guess.
School vouchers.
The school vouchers. And wow, that's something we've been pushing for 20 years. And we finally got a little piece of it, and something was ruled unconstitutional. And so I have not read it. I've looked to see it was a 3-2 decision. Got to figure out why would our conservative court not like it. But maybe they're just sending us a message and say, hey, correct this, and you've got your deal. But
is that the way the abortion legislation played out?
You're very keen to understand that, because that is how it happened. They told us you couldn't do this.
You passed policy. You were sued. The court made a ruling. You knew what to clean up and clear up to make it pass legal muster.
Yep. When you read what they said was the problem, we corrected it, passed something, and the next time around, then it's fine.
So the General Assembly will probably take up school choice again in January? Is that? I mean, are you comfortable saying that?
Yes, I am comfortable. I would think especially the House would probably jump on that pretty quick. Energy, we've got to jump on pretty quick.
Explain that, Phillip. I don't want to miss that. I mean, that's important. We talked about water locally. I mean, I don't know that Greenville's having a situation with their water. I don't know that Oree's having. We're having a big situation locally here with water, but statewide, you, Jordan, Rick and Ba, I'm thinking of Democrat Roger Kerr. I mean, I talked to Kent Williams. I talked to a lot of these guys. Everybody seems deeply concerned that the growth, both residentially and industrial, has led us to I don't want to say an energy deficit, but we're walking a tight wire.
2 years ago, they said we had 10 years, and if we didn't do something, we're going to have trouble. The plan was that the nuclear plant was be online and we'd be fine. That thing would just perk for the next 20 years, take care of everything we had. Well, that didn't work. So they got a natural gas plant because they know all the techniques to do that. It's fairly clean burning, and they were going to put one down towards Edisto, and that could happen 2 or 3 years. They know how to build one of those and get it up and running and help. But we've got 8 years left, and if we don't get it in 8 years, we're going to have brownouts around the state.
And you're not a partner with Duke Energy, but you are with the co-ops. I mean, one of our sponsors here is MPD Electric Co-op. I'm very confident in their abilities, but they work hand in hand with the General Assembly. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, we've got to watch the rates and help set rates, and we've got a committee for that, and so we've got to look out for the folks that there's certain things they can write off and that we have to pay for, and certain things that we don't. And so I know we do a good job at least of having good, dependable power here. But the beaches to go take it up, and we're growing, and we need a lot of power. Duke's getting a lot of power for that plant. I forget the number there, but it's an incredible amount that we had to make sure we had to come up with. But if you don't come up with these things and you fail that test, you can kiss industrial growth goodbye.
Because energy is a work in progress. I mean, you don't decide today to build a power plant tomorrow. I mean, you've got EPA and the federal government. You're at the mercy of what they will or will not do. I just got to believe when you guys are dealing with MPD Electric Co-op, as much as you'd not like to have to, you have to deal with EPA and federal legislation because it very much influences and regulates how we generate power.
And lawsuits. And mitigations and all kind of. It's
and the clock runs.
And the clock runs. And the part of this bill that we had that didn't make it through the Senate was dealing with the lawsuits that you can sue, but you can't stop us. We're going to keep moving. You can drag that lawsuit out all you want, but we're going to keep doing what we think is going to ultimately pass the courts. And that was unique because most of the time they'd sue and everything would just stop. And you'd just sit there for 2 or 3 years waiting on a court case to decide, And so I think I know that the environmental groups didn't like that, didn't like the way we were writing that, and I get it. But also, and sometimes you'd have a suit, and you'd finally settle that suit, and another one of the environmental groups would sue the next day just to tie you up again. So we've got to make that less regulatory, and because nobody, even environmentalists, don't want to lay around sweating in their house during the summer.
Everybody wants the heat and AC and water to work when you turn it on. Thank you, my man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate all your time. The dog's name is what?
That's Bay, B-A-Y.
And Bay had a bad accident today. Not a terrible accident, but bad enough to worry you a little bit.
I almost got dizzy, looking at, oh, my God, it was a rather large cut, 8 inches.
Well, go get the dog and make sure he or she, is it he or she?
She.
Make sure she's okay.
Got to get her on my Canada trip.
Good deal, my man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.